Okay,
What?
let's
Well, I was hoping
talk
that you
about
kind
this
of
for a
just
second.
sit there while I got some stuff done. So you just want me to sit here while you do stuff, not help or anything? No, okay, just you.
All right, so let's talk about this. So this is kind of interesting. So people with ADHD, so this person's basically saying, oh, like, I will be more productive if you come to my house and you sit down and you don't need to help me. But if you're around, it'll help. Okay, so let's understand, this is actually true. Let's understand the scientific principle behind it. And furthermore, once we understand the scientific principle, like you may be thinking, okay, so if having someone around will help me do my work, but like, what if I don't have someone around? How can I take advantage of this even if I don't have someone around? So this is really important to understand. So let's understand a little bit about why this helps people with ADHD. Okay, so let's say that this is your optimal level of functioning. Let's say that this is the level of stimulation, okay, in your environment. So what happens if you take a kid with ADHD and you put him in an empty room? What does the kid do? If a kid with ADHD is in a completely empty room with no stimulation, so you start them over there, what do they start to do? Do ADHD symptoms increase or decrease? So this worsens ADHD. So what you'll find with a kid in an empty room is that they'll like move around, they'll fidget, they'll like whatever. And so what they're actually doing in this situation is increasing their stimulation, right? So they're self-stimulating. They start doing stuff. So if I add, let's say, a couple of toys, so I give them moderate stimulation, what happens to their ADHD? Their ADHD improves. And if I put a kid in a room full of tons and tons of toys with flashing lights and all kinds of other stuff, very high stimulation, what happens? Worsens ADHD. Okay? So if you look at a neurotypical brain, so this may be the optimal level of stimulation for people with ADHD. The key thing is that if you look at neurotypical people, what you tend to find is that the optimal level of stimulation is probably over here. It's lower than it is with ADHD. So even if you put a neurotypical person in a room with like nothing, they will also self-stimulate, explore, etc. But if you put them with like as many toys as the ADHD person needs, that'll be overstimulation from them. And what they're going to need to do is actually kind of decrease their level of stimulation. So this is why, like, people with ADHD may study with music, things like that. So what does having another person do? It essentially increases the baseline level of stimulation to reach your optimal level for like performance and being able to do work. There are also studies that show, so there are a couple of other interesting principles here. So white noise is another good example of this, that people with ADHD, some of them who listen to white noise will actually be able to focus better. And it works on the same principle over here. A couple of other interesting side effects of this, if you're trying to get people with ADHD to meditate. Does anyone know one tip that you can tell someone who has ADHD if they have trouble meditating? What can you do? Anyone know? Meditate with your eyes open. So what does that do? It's kind of interesting, right? Because we tell most people to close their eyes when they meditate. But in this case, if you have someone with ADHD, sometimes if they meditate with their eyes open, they'll actually be able to focus better because eyes open will increase their baseline level of stimulation to the optimal level. So kind of interesting TikTok. Turns out it is also correct, right? But if you don't have a body double, if you don't have someone who can come over, there may be some baseline level of stimulation that you can increase, like white noise or listening to music or things like that, that can also work. Okay?
Being here is going to help me out a lot, but you can help yourself to anything, and I would never use them.
So
kind of makes sense, but it also
this also sort of makes sense, right? Because people with ADHD will be very activated by stimuli. So if you see the vegetables, you'll like open the thing and you'll be like, oh yeah, I have vegetables. And so it's kind of like